I knew fall camp had started when I saw that first Trojan walking towards the Trojan sword, and I heard the words, "Coming out."
You are Locked On Trojans, your daily podcast on the USC Trojans, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Fight on, everyone. I'm your host, Mark Culkin, and thank you for making Locked On USC your first listen every day. Whether you're watching me on YouTube or wherever you download your podcast, we're free. I cannot tell you how much I appreciate your support. You can show your appreciation by, especially if you're watching on YouTube, hit that subscribe button, smash that thumbs up button as often as possible, and we're in fall camp. I don't want you to miss an episode. Hit that bell notification button and you will not miss an episode. It's that simple. All right. Fall camp is open. I mean, when I saw the players coming out in shorts and shells and heading to the practice field and I heard those words, "coming out," that means security has to stop traffic. The world stops. USC football practice is back. Yeah. The 2023 USC football season opened fall camp this past Friday, early in the morning, before the sun came up. Well, the sun was just coming up when the guys were coming out to the field. It was an early wake-up call. The first practice was scheduled for 6:30 a.m., which meant a 4:30 a.m. wake-up call for me, and it was still dark outside. And I imagine that's probably when the players are waking up as well, getting their butts over to the McKay Center, getting some nutrition, getting themselves taped up, and getting out to the practice field. By the way, and we're going to talk about this in the second segment, a little recruiting news. The dead period is over, at least there's a brief period where the dead period is going to be over. And I'm bringing that up because one of the first people I saw at practice Friday was Annie Hansen. She was walking on her way up to the office. She said hello. And I hadn't seen her husband, Coach Zach, yet. So it made me wonder, who has the earlier wake-up call between those two? The first week of practice, first few days, and I believe it's going to be continuing into next week, into this week, since you're making a Locked On USC your first listen here on Monday. 6:30 a.m. this past Friday, and then they held it again Saturday and Sunday. By the time the team was practicing on Sunday, they were out in full pads, so things are moving quickly. And it's even earlier this upcoming week with the pads coming on as far as the schedule. I'm going to go over with you right now. Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. It'll go 6 a.m., 6 a.m., and then 6:30 a.m. On Wednesday's practice, we'll have Coach Riley after practice. And then Thursday, it's going to be offense and special team players along with assistant coaches. And then on Friday, it will be strength and individual, it'll just be Coach Riley after practice as far as the media interviews are concerned. So what we get to see during our time in practice, the media who's actually there getting you these insights and bringing them to you, and not taking video from everybody else off of YouTube and presenting it as their own. What we get to see is the team goes through a skip and stretch. I call it the skip and stretch conditioning session because that's kind of what it looks like. And then we get to see a little bit of, one-on-ones, some drills, but they scurry us out pretty quickly. So first day of camp means everyone is in shorts and shells. It's going to be limited contact. And these are NCAA rules. You kind of have to get yourself ramped up. Now, the first player that came out, and despite, I'll get to that in a moment. Bear Alexander. Coach Riley let everyone know after practice that he was limited. But we knew when we saw him coming out for practice, he was the first player that he wasn't going to be a full participant. Coach Riley said it's nothing to be concerned about, just some soft tissue, and it won't take very long for Bear to be practicing with the team. Again, and he was out there during that whole skip and stretch conditioning session. However, on a slightly more serious note, it's unconfirmed, and it's been reported out there, although I have it from a very solid source. Linebacker Rajon Davis is probably going to need a couple of weeks to rehab. I'm sure Lincoln Riley will bring it up when we talk to him after practice on Wednesday. There's a hand issue. That's all I'll say. So, what Rajon did do is he finished practice on Friday before it was diagnosed. So, there was over the weekend he did have a medical procedure, and I'll leave it there. The first coach that I saw attend practice or heading into practice was Coach Sean Nua. I love watching him walk to practice. He's got that hater gonna hate swag to him when he walks. You know what I'm talking about. If you've seen that meme, belly kind of extended, front porch, arms swaying side to side, no cares in the world. That's the way Coach Nua walks. And what I can tell everybody is nobody was wearing a no-contact, one of those yellow no-contact jerseys, except for the quarterbacks. They wear them every practice. Because I bring that up as a reminder that unless Lincoln Riley talks specifically about a player, the media is not allowed to mention guys wearing yellow practice jerseys during practice. So the first part of the day of that first practice session that the media was at was held on Dado, the baseball field, Dado Field. Not so much Howard Jones, but the Brian Kennedy portion of the field where the team typically does their skip and stretching and where the defense does a lot of their drill work. That's on Brian Kennedy Field. So they're trying to let that sod kind of get set in. Now, some of the other early bird guys who I saw walking out for practice were Kobe Pepe, Keon Bars, Braylan Shelby. The narrative around the weight room is how big everyone looks this offseason. Even Kobe Pepe, I've made fun in the past, and when I say made fun of, he looks like your typical nose tackle. He's got no neck. It's like head, shoulders. Kobe actually has a little bit more defined body this year. The guy who passed the eyeball test, won the award when he came out, Braylan Shelby. Yeah, man-child. And I say man-child because he's still just 17 years old. And he is physically developed. And he's going to, I think he's going to outgrow that rush end position where he's been hanging out. Because just wow. He's going to play this year. He caught everybody's attention when he came out. Something else one of the observations that I noticed and brought a smile to my face was I can't remember the last time I saw tight end Jude Wolfe going to practice without any type of assistance because he was always rehabbing an injury. So Friday, that was that day for Jude. No walking boot, no scooter, no crutches. And we hope it goes that way all season long. Make this the year. Christian Pierce is another impressive-looking freshman. And I'll talk about more of those guys in the third segment of the show. But Brendan Rice, during USC's Media Day, had mentioned that he's taking credit for Christian's weight room development. Another guy in the secondary, Damani Jackson, he's really filled out. Looks like a whole nother guy. Jamil Muhammad, Anthony Lucas, they walked out together. Lucas is taller. Jamil Muhammad is bigger. I mean, he's stout. He looks more like a middle linebacker than an edge rusher. Big and thick. Yeah, he looks more like Shane Lee. There was one of the things that I like to to do when I'm doing my notes and observations practice report that you can go check out over there on wearesc.com when you're done here, is when the players are coming out, there's some chatter, pick up some funny little quips from those guys. Well, there wasn't a lot of chatter on the first day. However, freshman wide receiver, Jacoby Lane, he found a way to make sure he got on camera. And it was funny the way he said it. Was like he was kind of speed walking a few paces behind Caleb Williams and wide receiver Kyron Hudson. And he saw everyone from the media shooting their video. He said, quote, "At least I can get on video with you y'all." Another of one of my observations. And Deuce Robinson, when he came running out, as soon as Austin Jones moves on to the NFL, Deuce needs to make a claim on that jersey number 6 because he is a bigger version of Michael Pittman. Yeah. And you'll really see it when next year. I know I'm jumping way ahead, but that body maturation from the freshman to their sophomore year, it's noticeable. So I'm sure Deuce, he needs to put a claim on number 6. And what I'm really talking about is that this year's roster just has different sized bodies. Really impressive. Freshman Alani Noah, Amos Talalele on the offensive line came in with the class. Huge guys. What was funny was when Amos was walking, he and Noah came out together, but Amos's legs, when they were rubbing together, and it sounded like two pieces of sandpaper rubbing against each other. Big, thick kid. I can go through the whole team that was walking out, but I want to talk about just some of the action that I saw. Again, the media that was there in person, we're able to give you some insight and not just show you a video. Mekhi Lemon, wide receiver room, really crowded. So he's out there. He was doing some kickoff returns with the special teams. Keep an eye on that. There was one collective moment from the media. And that happened when tight end Lake McCree, he hauled in a really nice one-handed grab in the back of the end zone. He had no chance to use both hands. He literally just stuck it out there, Velcroed, and then he toe tapped, touchdown. Nice pitch and catch from the quarterback. I believe that throw came from Miller Moss. And what's really nice about that is that USC's media day at the McKay Center the day before, I brought up his sneaky athleticism to Lake, and he's like, yeah, I got that in me. So not only can he hurdle Notre Dame players, he can also toe tap in the back of the end zone and make one-handed catches. Coach Roy Manning had to have felt like the most popular coach on the practice field because he actually had a full group of players to work with for the first time that I can remember. So what a difference a year makes. Last season, it seemed like he was lucky to have more than 2 guys at any one time. He had a full group. And I'll bring this up. I talked about it on Friday's episode of Locked on USC, but I got to see it firsthand in person when they were going through some of their drills. First team offensive line, left to right, Jonah Monheim, Gino Quinones, Justin Dietich, Jarrett Kingston, right guard, Michael Tarquin, right tackle. And during the time I was watching those drills, Jonah was actually paying it forward with, between the repetitions, with Elijah Page. He was showing Elijah where the proper hand placement goes and how to guide the defender when you're doing pass protection. This is the type of stuff you're not going to get anywhere else. You're only going to get it here on Locked on USC, and that's why you make it your first listen every day, because you're going to get the best practice results and reports. As far as recruits, class of 2025 linebacker, Noah McHale, he was out there watching. I'll go into that a little bit more of that. He's a high priority recruit. And then after practice, team gets some smoothies. It's part of their rehab process. Help the body recover. And even when practice is over, it's not over. Guys are sticking around, putting in extra work. everyone on the offensive line, they're taking turns snapping the ball just in case that emergency happens and their number gets called. And in case anybody's wondering, why are they practicing so early? Because they're still in summer classes. Don't forget, they start a week earlier this year with week 0 against San Jose State. So they go to practice first, then they go to class. And as I mentioned, first practice was on Friday. The media was shut out on Saturday and Sunday. And so the next 2 practices that the media will be at will be Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday next week. This week, actually. So we'll be at the next 3. So there you go. There's your first practice report. A little sloppy. It went a little bit long, and I don't think anybody minds. I think everybody's just as excited as I am. So I'll have another practice report for you later this week. But until then, what we're going to do is talk about eBay Motors. Because for every championship team, it's all about making sure every player has a perfect fit. And guess what? It's the same thing when it comes to your vehicle. Because every part needs to fit just right. So the next time you need parts and accessories, head on over to eBay Motors. With eBay Guaranteed Fit, you can be sure every part you need fits right the first time around. Just add your ride to My Garage and then look for the green mark. And then you're going to know the part fits just right, or you're going to get your money back. Because just like in sports, confidence is the name of the game when you shop on eBay Motors. And with over 122 million parts to choose from, you'll be back in the game in no time. After all, it's easy to bring home a win when all the right parts are guaranteed. So get the right parts, the right fit, and the right prices on ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. eBay. Guaranteed fit of only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions do apply. All right, so let's jump right into it. I'm running long on this show. I don't think any cares. We're going to get right into some recruiting. Some of those June commits, are they turning into July flips? Well, so far, there's only been one actual USC commitment who's changed his mind. Offensive lineman Manesi Atiti, who was actually once considered a Florida State lean. Well, he committed to USC in June. And then last week, he flipped to Florida State. Most think he got swayed by the NIL bag. Look, was he going to play for USC in 2024? No. He was probably more of a developmental prospect with high upside. That's why USC wanted him. Here's what I also know. There was a Florida insider who found the flip a little curious. And this isn't like just any insider. This guy actually works for the Florida State football program. He reached out and he was wondering, did USC lose interest? So no one at Florida State, I don't know, they're a little interested in why this flip came and when it happened. We'll see what happens down the line throughout the season. Another player that maybe USC recruiting fans might be a little concerned about, how about Dakota Fields? Is he the next one to flip? The cornerback from Sarah, USC's backyard, he took a visit to Eugene over the weekend. I mentioned the dead period is over. So are those NIL bags starting to look more appealing to the high school recruits? I don't know. I heard that Notre Dame went all in with Kingston Viliamuasa. I mean, it was enough to convince him to go to South Bend, say, hey, it's a fun place to play football and live. I'm also going to tell everybody, don't be surprised if Kingston is Notre Dame's starting linebacker this year. Speaking of opening up the checkbook, they're flipping guys from Georgia and Alabama. Auburn. And I bring up Auburn only because they seem to be the clubhouse leader for modern days DeAndre Carter. At one time, USC was after DeAndre. Again, we'll see what happens. First signing period is not till December. And I know it sounds like everything's bad news with recruiting. It's not. Trust me. Here comes the good news. Once Vili Amuasa made his decision known that he was going to Notre Dame, linebacker recruiting picked up for USC. Out of Brunswick, Georgia, 3-star, class of 2024 linebacker Devin Smith. He picked up an offer from USC. 6'3", 220 pounds. Earlier, he had trimmed his list to 5 schools. And those 5 schools included Alabama, Auburn, South Carolina, LSU, and Kentucky. So, some pretty nice names on that list, right? What's interesting about his recruitment is Smith has taken 25 visits to 16 different schools. None of them have been official visits yet. So he's got I mentioned those 5 schools he trimmed his list down to. He's got a pretty impressive list of over 35 programs. LSU, Alabama, Auburn, South Carolina, Miami, Ohio State, Michigan, Ole Miss, Notre Dame, Florida State, Tennessee. It's good to see USC throw their name in the pile there. Another linebacker that USC just offered, and he's actually the number 1 player from the state of Kansas. His name, Michael Boganowski. And he said he's blessed to receive an offer from the University of Southern California. I mentioned in the first segment, I told you about 2025 linebacker Noah McHale. He was on campus with his family. And then over the weekend, while USC was practicing, and the USC actually hosted a bunch of visitors, including, and most of these guys were for the 2025 recruiting class. Cornerback Dijon Lee from Mission Viejo, 6'3", 180. He was on campus at USC back in, I think it was in June or May. And he said, SCU is recruiting me the hardest. It was a really good visit. I saw Coach Dante, Lincoln Riley, and I was there by myself, so it felt very special. It was a lot. 2025 running back Jordan Davison from Mater Dei. He was checking out USC's practice. 2025 tight end Jack Van Dorselaer out of Austin, Texas. And finally, some good news for the 2025 class. We know that USC already has 1 safety commit, Traquan Fagan's younger brother, Anquan. Well, Ohio State had a commit. His name was Jonte Gilbert. He's out of Georgia. He's been committed to the Buckeyes since July of 2022. He said that USC's been his dream school. And he said that before he took a visit to USC, this one I know for sure was back in May. And he said he had to take it all in. I loved that visit. It really stood out for me. I feel USC's up there with Ohio State, if not above Ohio State right now. They kept it real with me. You know, they don't sugarcoat nothing. They tell me the truth. They keep it straight up with the guys, and I love that, end quote. Starting to get a feeling that USC might be getting a commitment soon from Mr. Jonte Gilbert. And if that happens, USC would have 2 safeties in their class of 2025. So we'll see what happens. So in the first segment, I talked about the guys who are walking out for first practice, and that's really the biggest takeaway. You know, what do these guys look like coming out? They've got their helmets on. I understand, just shorts, shells, helmets, not a lot going on. Still, though, you get an idea of the difference in what the roster looks like in 2023 versus what it looked like in 2022. I mentioned Braylan Shelby. He won the Gold Star Award for the most impressive freshman walking out, without a doubt. But another guy who's going to be playing next to Braylan, Braylan wears number 34. Keep an eye on number 35, David DJPB. He's not that far behind. Another guy who caught my eye, maybe do a little double take, defensive lineman Elijah Hughes. He's wearing jersey number 56. That's usually an offensive line number. Well, Hughes looks all of 6'3", 265 pounds. Be interesting to see if he can crack the rotation by the end of the year. There's a lot more depth in 2023. Deuce Robinson is another impressive freshman. His first catches, ironically, they were happening on Dado in a football uniform. We know that Deuce Robinson is going to play baseball at USC as well. Jacoby Lane, I talked about him. He made the walkout video. Pretty cool to see him. A lot thicker. 6'5". He's a little bit thicker than, he's not a rail guy. He doesn't look like sticks. And again, a lot bigger than I thought he'd be. Dejan Lafitte is another freshman. He's wearing Brandon Peely's old number. He could be a guy that they eventually plug in the middle. Keep in mind, these freshmen that come in, like Alani Noah, Amos Talalele, Micah Banuelos, Dejan Lafitte, they're big guys, but they're still working on their bodies. I'll use Kenichi Udeze as my anecdotal analogy. When he came to USC, you know what his nickname was? Baby Huey. And that's because he had a lot of baby fat. These guys have to shape their bodies, make them look like they're college football players. The following year, Baby Huey, his nickname was now BKU. Big Kenichi Udeze. He looked like a different guy. Sculpted Adonis. These guys that I'm talking about now, they'll get there. As long as they put their time in the weight room, listen to, strength and conditioning coach Benny Wiley, and listen to their teammates, lead them to water, they'll drink eventually. They better, or they won't be playing at USC. The transfer portal, it'll humble everybody. All right, there you go. First practice report in the books. I will be back again tomorrow with another episode of Locked on USC, coming at you 5 times a week. And I'll find a way to get some notes from the practices that the media wasn't able to attend. So, until that next episode, everyone, you know what to do.